Well, oh, sorry, I got caught in that, didn't I?
Yeah, boy, it just goes and then that's it. You barely get moving and then it's done. So
Well, if we leave it too long, everybody just start dancing,
yeah,
then paying attention to
hey, we might get all kinds of viewers from that. So
the dance party on LinkedIn.
right,
So,
that's right.
yeah.
Oh, look at this. So no, welcome to episode number 133, and yeah, we're going to talk about what's working in 2025 today so far. What's
So,
working so far in 2025?
yeah, absolutely. So,
We're what, almost 5 months, 4 months in, a little, almost 4 months
yeah,
in.
it,
Yeah,
oh, I don't know about you, Tom. I don't know about anyone else. And I think it's an age thing. Like the older you get, the years seem to go by a lot faster. That's what I hear. That's what I
yeah,
feel. Curious
yeah,
what anyone else thinks.
yeah. No, it just seems like the holidays were just here,
Yeah,
and
absolutely. Well, welcome everybody, and if you're on live with us, thank you for joining us. And know that wherever you're watching it, LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, any of your comments that you make live, we generally are going to be able to see them, and we like to pull your comments in and see if we can answer questions or take your answers to some of the questions and put them up on the screen and get you to join. So if you do that, please do so. And if you're watching the recording or you're watching on podcast, we appreciate you as well, especially on the podcast. If you like what you're hearing, we'd appreciate a review, or snap a picture, share it with somebody that could use it, and come and join us. Let's keep the conversation going, right, Tom?
absolutely. And I've noticed recently we've had a few people do just that. What you said is kind of do a screenshot, share it. So thank
Yeah.
you. Very, 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 very helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. Especially 133 episodes into it. Whew,
Yeah. Just see another thing. It just seemed like it was yesterday.
it does, doesn't it? In some ways, in other ways, it feels like it was 20 years ago.
All
Well,
right.
yeah.
Well, hey, as always, right, we're sponsored by Fist Bump. Brandon, any upcoming webinars, anything that everyone should be marking their calendar for?
Yeah, no, we've got a webinar coming up later in May. We'll talk about that maybe next week. But no, what we found, especially, AI has been inundating. We're going to talk about that with social. We have a new service offering. We do the shows, we do the podcasts, we do some thought leadership programs. Our playbook is we need about an hour a week from leaders. But we found a lot of companies, they're so desperate for good content, and they've been trying AI, and they're producing more content, but they're not producing the results. And so one of the service offerings, not quite ready to announce it, but people be thinking about it. It's going to be, we interview somebody from the team, leaders, anyone, on specific topics. So we're getting their voice, and they're talking for about 30 minutes twice a month. And from each 30-minute session, we're producing 2 weeks worth of content for them. Blogs, newsletters, as well as social content. So it's content that goes across the channels, across the mediums, for email and sales emails and email campaigns, and as well as blog articles and newsletters. So that's coming out in May. And if anybody's got an interest in that, I mean, the price point, in my opinion, it's really hard to beat. It's going to be $1,500 to $2,000 a month for that. But the amount of content that you get is hard to beat.
And would the interview happen every month? And what are you asking, like, news in their business or news in their industry, or what would be the types of topics?
Yeah, that's a good question. So we will do 2 30-minute sessions with them per month on the
Okay.
interviews, video interviews in our digital studio. Topics are going to vary. I mean, we're going to work with the teams to find out, wait, what's new in your industry, what's going on, but it's going to be focused on thought leadership and adding value, and really teaching people what's going on, and teaching how to do things, or every company is going to be slightly different, but it's really focused on that, because that's the type of content that's getting engaged with right now. We'll talk a little bit about that today also.
Okay. Great.
This whole content thing, I look back sometimes, I sit there and think, I started doing content marketing. We didn't call it content marketing back then, of course, but I started doing content marketing in 1998. Working with owners of businesses and creating content. We did a lot of print and mail back then, but it was the same concept. Like, we use content to build reputation, to stay top of mind, because buyers aren't always in the market, right? They're out there, but they're not necessarily thinking about what we sell today. But when we're consistent with content, we're staying top of mind, we're sharing value, we're doing those personal touches. And we've all talked about this, we've known this for years, and the number changes, but it takes X amount of touches before somebody even remembers you, or it takes X amount of touches before it kind of registers, like, oh, that's what they do, oh yeah, and then they start to remember. And what I find with most companies, and this has been throughout my career, we stop too soon.
Yep.
We do 3 or 5 touches and then quit and move on
Yep.
to a different
Yep.
group, and we stay
Yep.
frustrated. And, it takes 15 to 20 touches, sometimes up over 30 touches. And that's why content is so important, and good content is very important, right? If we're adding value and they read something once and go, oh, that's interesting, they're going to keep coming back for more. But if we're creating content, especially just a bunch of AI stuff that's like, oh, that's a summary of something else, we lose interest really quickly. And then all of our future content goes through that filter of, well, I read something before and it was boring, or it didn't add value, or I didn't really care about it. And so then they start to avoid the content.
Goes into the noise category. Yeah.
Yeah, you go in the noise category, and it becomes a big challenge, because there's a lot of teams, we're creating content, we're pushing out emails, we've got email campaigns, we have social content, but we're not getting the clicks, we're not getting the engagement, well, we got to take a look at the quality of the content and what type of content we're producing. And I do like video a lot. It's a richer medium and people watch it, but I also like getting people on video, because the vast majority of us, not everybody, but we communicate so much better verbally than we do in writing. I talked to a sales leader earlier this week, and he said that he spent 4 times working on a piece of content and deleted all 4 and never posted. And that's a real challenge, and it's frustrating. So there's lots of ways to get around it, but it's definitely a new muscle that takes exercise to get better and better and get the fruit from it.
Well, let's use that as kind of our, I guess, springboard, right,
Sure.
to what is been working. And when we say what is working, right, probably the first question people will say, well, what do you mean by what's working even mean,
Yeah.
right? And I'll kind of set what I believe is the stage for that, and we'll certainly touch on these. But I think there's 2 things, right? Well, ultimately, what's working is, are you getting opportunities? Are you getting qualified sales opportunities? That's what it means, is it working, right? And we know it's harder than ever to get qualified sales
Mhm.
opportunities, or certainly a lot of the things that we did for many years isn't effective anymore for getting qualified sales opportunities. So I think that's the ultimate what's working. But then what we want to talk about is we kind of peel back behind that. Well, what are the things that are working to get to the point to have an opportunity to have, or to get a qualified opportunity, right? You're not just going to go from 0 to 60 in one big jump. There's a number of things along the way that then create that opportunity along the way, which certainly you were just hitting on here just a second ago.
Yeah, and that makes me think of patience. We tend to be a very impatient people, and we want things to work. And I get it. Like, I mean, I was telling somebody the other day, I loved call centers. I loved cold calling when it worked. It was incredible. And I wish we could go back to that. I mean, I wish cold calls still worked. We had control. We could, control how many calls we make. We could test different scripts. We test different, conversational strategies and models that we would use. We could refine it pretty quickly. And at the end of the day, we had um, we had data. Like
Yeah. And you
we,
had instant gratification, right?
yeah,
On what
yeah.
you're doing. And
We had boards, right? You can have
yeah,
boards, and you're putting up tally marks and all that, and it
right.
gets really frustrating if you think that way, and you're going days or even weeks without getting fruit from it. It's really frustrating. So patience is, I think, a big part of it right now. A commitment to your content strategy, and with that, it doesn't mean just keep producing the same stuff over and over again, but it means keep producing, keep trying, keep doing different things, get a little bit uncomfortable, get outside of what you've normally done, and see what are people engaging with, what are people responding to.
I'm going to go off script already. Um,
Nice. I like going off
but,
script.
hey, we've been live for what, 10 minutes or so. So
Hmm.
why not? But, you know, I agree, first of all, right? Instant gratification. I think that if you're expecting instant gratification, especially in B2B, right? I think in B2C, okay, there may be some opportunity for that. But in the B2B world, especially if you have any sort of, reasonably sized purchase, it's not instant gratification.
Hmm.
So you're right, your patience has to be there. But, right, you also have to have confidence that you are doing the things that are moving the needle or moving the items of at least incrementally, step by step by step, which I call the yellow brick road, right?
Right.
You have to have some level of confidence that you are moving a prospect down that yellow brick road to the point where at least they're heading in the direction of becoming an opportunity that's there. And so that's why the spray and pray, as you mentioned with content, first of all, probably is not going to lead them down any road other than create noise that's there on the other end. But I think more than ever, right, it goes back to understanding what is that yellow brick road that your prospect needs to travel, and what
Hmm.
are the different, and how do you get them there? And I want to touch on some of this that we've learned um, in my other business or in Lead Smart. I've learned a lot in the last 6 months about this, about how to use that and how to move the yellow brick road. But I
Yeah.
agree, back to the instant gratification. I think if you're looking for instant gratification, I think you're going to be very disappointed in this day and age. And you end up wasting a lot of energy and a lot of attention on things because you still want that instant gratification, where you could be putting that attention on things that are actually going to have a return, albeit down the road a bit.
Yeah. It reminds me of the story, and it's a true story, and I may hack it up a little bit, but of the the guy, and I forgot his name, but he was digging for gold and mining for gold, and um, yeah, this is where it's going to be. I know it's here, and was digging and digging, and then had to go raise more money and kept digging and all that, and then when eventually they quit and moved on and licked their wounds and moved into a different industry. And this is out of, How to Win Friends and Influence People. And then years later, someone else came and bought that land and started digging for gold. And they were 5 inches away from hitting a vein. And then that vein opened up down below to this huge amount of gold.
Yeah.
And I think it's such a great story because consistency and that repetition is so important. I spoke with a CEO a month or so ago, wanted to meet with me. We met for coffee. It was local, and I said, why me? Why now? Like, what's going on? Type of question. And he said, he goes, it's really funny. He's like, I remember this a couple years ago, you had posted in LinkedIn, and it was a picture of you and your daughter hiking. And I forget the exact content, but you were relating content. You were on a hiking trail that was a storm came through, and you were relating that when we're on a hiking trail and there's a tree down and other things, it's not what you expect, and you related it back to business and our go to markets, and things happen and things we don't expect, and we just need to be agile and adjust to it. And he said, I just remembered it because I go hiking with my kids as well, and it just kind of sat in his brain. 2 years ago, he didn't need me, wasn't even in the market, wasn't considering any of this. And then when we saw each other at an event. He's like, "Hey, I want to talk to you." And you came in, you said, "Hey, I'm really interested in kind of the leader-led content stuff. Can we talk?" My point of it is that the patience is important because there is the opportunity for shorter sales cycles with social, but you're also building up the longer term pipeline. We know buyers don't reach out to us immediately. And we know they have all these other opportunities, whether it's social, it's content, it's other people, where they're doing their research without us even knowing. If we create content and in a month or 2 or 3 months or something, we're like, "Oh, this isn't producing the way we thought," and we quit, we still have to stay top of mind so that when that need arises or when they start thinking about our offering, our service, we're still there for them to go, "Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah," and to give ourselves that opportunity to be found.
Mhm.
And that doesn't take away from any of the outreach. We do know the data. I mean, cold emails, cold calls have such a low response rate right now. But if we stop doing them, we're missing the opportunity to do those touches. And it's the same exact thing with social.
Mhm. So where do we want to start? I know we want to talk about a few different categories today about what's working and maybe what's not.
Yeah.
Maybe we just quickly start with social and then we'll go into live events and podcast.
Yeah. I mean,
And then we'll talk a bit about AI and how
yeah.
that's kind of what's working on those three categories, at least to start.
Yeah. Go for it. Where do we want to start?
Well, let's start with social, and then we'll go into podcasts and live events.
Yeah.
So, Brandon, you certainly are an expert in this area, I would say, and you are very much on the pulse of what's going on. I guess at a high level, what would you say from a social LinkedIn perspective? What's working today or having better results today than maybe it was 6 months ago? And what is not working or what is not having the
Mhm.
same results that it was 6 months ago?
Well, let's answer what's not working is really what we just discussed, right?
Okay.
The spray and pray, random acts of content, being inconsistent, starting something, stopping, like all of that, and talking about ourselves. I mean, I can't believe we're still talking about this, but posting your brochures or, "Oh, we're releasing a new product." I mean, there's a space for it. You just can't have high expectations that all of a sudden people are going to come, drop POs in your lap for that type of content. So, um, look, content overall, and I mean, we're talking social, but it's really content, right? And that same content could be used across email. It could be used on our blogs. It could be used in sales emails. It could be used in newsletters. There's lots of different ways to use it. Two things that I'm seeing that work best in content is your content, and these words suck. I get it. Authentic, transparent, honest, emotional, sharing your story, being human. Choose the way that it resonates most with you. And by the way, authentic isn't full open komodo and share all your wounds and warts and sores and everything. It's just being more like, "Hey, this is what's happening," and teaching people how to do things. Teaching them the solutions. Like we talk about our playbook all the time, like, here's how we do it. I mean, you want to take a 1 hour video and turn it into weeks worth of content. Here's how you do it. And when you're teaching people, we all know most people aren't going to do things on their own. They're too busy. They already have a full load. If it really resonates with them, yeah, some people are going to take it and go do it on their own. Great, good for them. But most people are going to come back to who's teaching and say, "We need to know how to do this. Teach us more, pay you to teach them more how to do it tactically, or pay you to do it for them." So that shift of content, Getting rid of the I and me in our content and getting into the we and us is one simple tactic to get our content more. We're presenting ourselves as part of the community, not somebody that's going to come in and teach and learn the community. This is a huge mistake that I made for years. And I think it's personality. It's like, I was doing speaking and things like that. And so I started creating content of like, here's what you do. I did this and then this is that. And it was, my heart was to teach, but I wasn't getting the engagement. I had someone tell me, it's like, one big shift you need to do is just shift the tone, shift the words that you're using. It's we and us, not I and me, because then people feel a part of it and people don't want to be spoken to. They
Sure.
want to speak with. That's one big area.
So what I'm hearing you say is focus on more of the how to, the educational aspect of things in that content versus more generic, sort of generalized
Yeah.
um, pieces.
Yeah. I
Go
mean,
deeper, I guess, is what I hear you say.
yeah, I mean, like go deeper and then talk about the problem. Hey, we tried this, it didn't work. Here's what we discovered.
Right.
Is anyone else going through this? Like communalize, like what's the word I'm looking for? Crowdsource what you're going through, and it drives and attracts more people to you because they want to be a part of learning with you, not learning from you.
It's interesting, it seems like LinkedIn has a lot of times attracted the types of, or posts that were more opinion. Hey, here's my opinion. Here's what I believe. Here's what I think. And I'm not saying that those haven't worked. I think that those have gotten over time reasonable levels of results.
Yeah.
But what you're talking about kind of goes to another level beyond an opinion. It's actually maybe a fact. Like here's something that actually real life happened, like a case study or a situation. But I think I'm just thinking aloud as you're going through this, is like that how to, right? Oh, here's what I've learned, and here's what I'm going to do to address it, or here's how we fixed it, or here's how we got around it, or
Here's a
here's
problem counter.
right, right, right.
Yeah.
Um, I think
I think
I think that definitely would carry more weight than an opinion or a philosophical viewpoint on something.
Yeah, I mean, you nailed it. You synthesized that well and summarized it. Is an overall higher level, 30,000 foot. Here's what's going on. We know that. Like most of us, we know that's what's going
Yeah,
on.
yeah,
You can start getting in. Like I think for you guys with Lead Smart, Tom, if you were sharing things like, "Hey, we were doing the CRM integration, and these are some of the things we were trying to solve. These are some of the challenges and things that we overcame, or we hit and we weren't sure how to handle it." Other people that are frustrated with their CRM or they're trying to get better use of their CRM, they're going to start paying attention to it because now they're looking at it going, what can I learn from this?
right. It resonates, right? It
Right.
resonates.
Right.
Yeah.
But if we keep it up here, it's already stuff they know and we're bored with that.
So let's also talk a little bit about, a topic that we've talked about a lot over the 138 episode, 33 episodes is commenting.
Yeah.
So if your strategy for posting is to do what we just talked about, go deeper, more how to, what should be your strategy for commenting? Or is there a
Well,
strategy for commenting?
I think it's the same thing. I mean,
Okay.
everything is, I think we could summarize everything down to practical value, teaching, sharing, not strategizing, but sharing. And the commenting deeper, bigger. So I've learned, and I don't know the details, it's in one of my group, we've been talking about it, is that, LinkedIn is looking at the robust nature of comments and they're putting weight to our comments. So if we're commenting and what I heard, it's like 15 words or more. So it's a meteor comment, not just hey, great job, I really like this, but it's kind of a meteor comment. It's actually helping your content, your post, get more engagement, more views, right, in the news feed. So the more we're commenting on other people's posts, I think there's there's three key things that happen when we comment on other people's posts. Number one, if this is what LinkedIn's doing, they're going to weight the meat and the depth and the value of your comments and apply that to your post to be seen by more people. Number two, when you're commenting, don't just go to the news feed, but go comment strategically. Take a list of the top 50 people who influence your buyers, who are the coaches, the consultants, the speakers, the people that create content on a regular basis, and put them in your rotation and go to those posts and really engage with those, because now you know who's looking at their post because of who the person is that published it. And so you can go add really robust comments there, and people are seeing your comments, right? It's I, you start to get we start to get people to see our comments and then send connection requests, or people see comments and then follow because like, hey, I liked what you said over there. I want to pay attention to more. And then the third thing is the amount of commenting. So comment for 10 or 15 minutes, publish, and then go comment on other people's posts for another 10 or 15 or 30 minutes, right? What we're demonstrating to the LinkedIn algorithm is, hey, I'm active. I'm not just here speaking to the crowd. I'm actually engaging with other people. So commenting is the social version of listening. Right? If we don't comment, they don't know we listened. And LinkedIn rewards people who are active in LinkedIn, publishing and commenting, not just publishing.
So your authority, if you want to call it that, on LinkedIn can increase if you're doing a combination of posting and commenting. Is
Right.
what I'm hearing you say.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
And I think going back to what and I want to hit this question here in a minute, but that came up, but going back to commenting as well, if you can add maybe a deeper insight or an example, right? If somebody, hey, here's a situation or an example
Mm-hmm.
that resonates with what you're talking about that I can share.
Right.
And I guess there's no, I mean, if your comment's long, so what? Right.
Right.
I
I
don't,
mean, from the LinkedIn algorithm perspective, the longer comment is better.
right, right,
Right.
right,
And if you're adding value, people aren't going to care that it's a little bit longer because they're getting something from it. And
right.
we can't neglect storytelling. I mean, storytelling in all forms, whether it's verbal, it's written. Storytelling is always valuable because that's the way we think. It triggers into the emotional side. It gets us following. We want to know what's going to happen. We want to know, like, oh, where did these people get? This was a situation. These were the challenges. Where did they get? Did they solve it? Did they not solve it? Like, we want to know the ending. Like, if we ever watched a stupid show and then realized it was stupid, but had to watch the end just to see how the stupid show was going to end. And sure enough, it was a stupid ending. But we still want to know what happened.
Yeah.
So storytelling in our content, in our post, and in our comments are going to serve us well.
Yep. And I think storytelling is easier if you're talking about a example. Hey, let me tell you a story. Let me tell you a example of what happened. You're inherently going to be telling a story. If you're
Right.
telling about a real live thing, or right, it's just built into the DNA of what you're talking about because you're
Right.
talking about something real. Hey, I wanted to hit before we move on to podcasts and live shows. There's a question here. Thoughts on posting. It's from a LinkedIn user, so I don't know who it is, but it says thoughts
Sorry,
on
we
posting.
don't know who you are. We'd shout you out, but we don't know who you are. It
Yeah,
says LinkedIn user.
yeah. Thoughts on posting sales educational content versus trying to speak from the customer's perspective. Um, I'll give you my opinion on this, Brandon, but I'd like your take for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that if you did, say, 70% from the customer's perspective, it earns you and it's good stuff. It earns you the right to effectively then post some sales educational content that might actually get consumed and absorbed. But if you're posting 70 or 80% sales educational content, and we know a lot of what sales educational content can be in terms
Mm-hmm.
of its generic form,
Yeah.
I don't think that you earn the attention that you would if you're doing more from the customer perspective and then sprinkling in some of that. What's your
Yeah.
thought?
Well, I would have questions on what exactly do we mean by educational content? Because if it's how
I
to
would be
do,
thinking like white paper, stuff you'd put in a white paper or stuff like that, right? Not a brochure, but a white paper type thing.
yeah, I mean, I think if that's the case, then I agree with you. There's room for that. You want to sprinkle it in, but it's not something that's going to get engaged and consumed repeatedly, because a lot of that educational type of content, we're getting it from 50 different sources, and it's
Mhm,
all about the same stuff.
mhm.
Especially like in our space, we talk with a lot of coaches. We have them as guests and authors and speakers, and the reality is a lot of them say the same stuff. They just say it in slightly different ways, right? We got to stop spraying and praying. We have to be more focused. Okay, great. We know that. How do we get more focused? Right? What do we tactically do to get more focused? Like a better piece would be, hey, create a GPT that's going to help you do research so that you're doing it faster. Go and set it all up and get the prompts and everything right. But then when you're going to reach out to somebody, drop in their LinkedIn URL and maybe the URL from their company and see what kind of research it's going to give you. If you set it in advance, it's going to tell you like, hey, this is what's going on in the industry. These are some of the challenges that people in the industry are having. Maybe it's specific challenges this company's going through, or this company just went through a merger or an acquisition. And you get more insights. And now when you're reaching out to them, whether it's a direct reach out or you start creating content to try and capture their attention, you can create content about companies that are in that exact situation.
Right, right.
And that's more from a customer's perspective.
Yeah. Well, again, even examples and everything, how to or whatever, those are going to be
Yeah.
more from a customer perspective. So
And I
hopefully,
don't want to neglect this. And I think this becomes a little bit more controversial. And it's something that I really believe to be true in my, almost 25 plus years of creating content. Our humanity content gets remembered, right? There's so much people talking business, business, business. It's easy for people to go, wait, where did I hear that from? But our humanity content, it's our uniqueifier. It's about us. Now, I'm not saying take pictures of your food and publish it like we used to do on Facebook, but that's why I like that marriage of personal or human pictures with a message that's talking specifically about a business tactic from, and it can be from the customer's perspective. The story I was sharing earlier about that CEO, he remembered the picture of me with my daughter hiking. It resonated with him because he's a dad also, and he goes hiking with his kids. He's very outdoorsy. It caught his attention. So emotionally, it caught his attention. And I believe it made him start to feel like, hey, Brandon and I are alike, right? He kind of resonated, or I resonated with him, that we were alike, and he remembered that. And then years later, the value of my content, of what we do with leader-led content and how to use it, came to be important. And that's where I think I came to mind,
where the magic happened, right?
where
At
the
that point.
magic happened,
Yep.
right? So don't neglect that. Um, you know, I I haven't posted about this for a while, but I do ask the network, like, what do you find happens when you post your humanity content? And there's a lot of people that say, I get way more engagement on my humanity content than my business content. Totally true. And it's going to happen because we are emotional beings and we are going to resonate with that. Right. Um, and then when we're using it to see, well, who engaged with it, and if they're in your industry or something, well, then send them a direct message and start the conversation there. Or if somebody's engaged with it who's not a first connection, send them a connection request and chat with them there. Take the conversation further. Think about this as networking and getting to know people, not just, I only want to talk to my ICP. I only want to talk to people who buy. And I know that's hard for a lot of people because we're all under pressure to sell more and make more money today. But it's not always what you know, it's who you know. And if you're not giving yourself to know more people, you're just not going to know more people or get introduced to more people.
Yep. Absolutely. All right. Well, let's switch from social now into live shows and podcasts.
Yeah. And I want to say,
And
I think, shows and podcasts are part of social, right?
Sure, of course, but I think it's a very specialized, right, sort of application of it that's there. Um, and I wanted to share something that I've learned, Brandon, from our other show, from my Around the Horn,
I've been excited to hear this.
yeah, in wholesale. So as you know, Brandon, but others may not, is my software company. We have a vertical CRM for manufacturers and wholesale distributors. That's my software company. And we have a podcast that is an industry specific podcast. It's called Around the Horn. We've been doing it for about just going on 3 years. So just a little more than we've been doing this show, actually. Um, and when I went back and I looked at our pipeline for the last 6 months, every single company in that pipeline was directly or indirectly associated with the podcast first. So in other words, we had they got to know us, first of all, through the podcast. Okay, that's not crazy, but this is what really hit me. When they first reached out, we had created almost zero demand for our software. So in other words, if you go to my revenue zone matrix, right, where you have know, like, trust on the x-axis and you have awareness, interest, and demand on the y-axis, we had done a great job of building the know, like, trust. They really trusted us after listening to the podcast for however long that they have. But we had created actually very little demand for our product and our technology when we first had that conversation. But here's what I found really interesting, because I went back and looked at the interaction. Rather than coming and treating us like a vendor, the conversation was like a partner. And we went in and they asked, and we're now getting requests pretty frequently, not to do a demo, but to come in and do a 90-minute webinar, seminar, whatever, and educate us on the opportunity that is provided by what you're doing, how it's going to build our business. They look at us truly as a trusted advisor, not a vendor.
Yeah.
But that only happens because the trust was built first, right?
Yeah.
And then we have the opportunity to create the demand. We then create the demand, but it's done in a way that we're not selling, we're educating, and we're being invited to educate, right?
Mm-hmm.
Or I think if they don't know, like, and trust you, you get treated more as a vendor and you're being invited to pitch. There's a very big difference between being invited to pitch versus being invited to educate and to guide, right? Guide and educate versus pitch. And when I went back and kind of just peeled the onion on all of the different sales and prospects and things that we've done, those were the common denominators that I saw. And what was really cool is we didn't get ghosted along the way. If a deal got delayed or didn't come through, we were communicated as to what was going on. It wasn't just, hey, so you actually ended up in a real relationship with them, whether they ended up buying right away or not. And a lot of them who didn't buy probably will buy somewhere down the road. And we eliminated all the competition, right? There wasn't a competitive situation, which is what you get into when you pitch. Anyway, it was really interesting to go back and look at the data from all of that. Now, granted, that's a long-term play, right? That didn't happen with a snap of a finger, but my gosh, it's so much easier and so much better than trying to pitch in a very red ocean of competitors.
Yeah, so there's two things that came to mind when you were saying that. One is the long-term play, and the other one is know, like, and trust. So I'll throw that out there in case I forget. But you know, a lot of people I talk to. I mean, I talked to somebody who was introduced to me and looked at what we did with the shows and everything, and the CEO's response was, "That's great. That's long tail. We don't have time for that. We have to get sales now." And that's a hard place to be in the market conditions that we're in. And when I say market conditions, it's not just cold calling is hard, cold emails are hard, but then we got the uncertainty around tariffs and everybody trying to make decisions what they're going to do with their dollars that they have saved or what they were going to spend. Um, so it's hard when you're just like, we've got to get sales now. And so you're going right into the red ocean with everyone else. We're going to compete on voicemail and we're going to compete in emails in the inbox from somebody who they don't know. And I want to ask everybody to think about this. And I'm more and more confident as I ask more and more people, when you first log into your email in the morning and you're trying to make sense out of it because you got a big long list, what do you do to try and make sense out of it? What's the human filter that you go through? And most often, what I hear people say is, if I don't know their name, I go through and check everybody who I don't know. And if I go, maybe they look at the subject line, but overall, it's if I don't know who they are, it's probably not something I'm going to pay attention to because I don't have time to pay attention to it, and it's gone. So yes, it is a long-term play, but it does build up. I mean, I don't want to repeat everything you said. It creates relationships that are ready to talk, and they have that lens of looking at you as this is somebody we need to talk to, not, hey, this is one of several people we're going to try out and see what's going on.
No, you become a vendor, right? When you're looked at as a vendor, of course, right away, I believe it gives the other party the right in their mind to ghost you and to treat you like
Hmm.
a vendor and not communicate. And, all it's just it's a different relationship, right?
Right. Yeah.
Versus, and I know this word partner is overused, but I don't know a better word for it, right? Or at least you're maybe a peer, right? A little bit of a peer relationship
Well,
versus
look,
a
if they consider you and treat you like a partner, I mean, so much of the sales process is won there. Now you got to get into the
right,
details, of course.
right.
But if they're perceiving you as a partner, they're perceiving you as the expert that they need to talk to, then a big portion of that is won.
Yep.
So I do want to address the know, like, and trust, but I think let's look at Michael's question he has for you. I think that's really important to address, and you guys have done a great job on your show on
Yeah.
these topics.
So his question is what topics do we present during the podcast? Um, the podcast that we do is a little bit different, like than say this show. What we do is we create a newsletter every week around news in the industry, and it's different categories of news. It could be finance. There's certainly a lot of talk about tariffs and everything like that right now. It could be about around technology. It could be around business transactions that are happening in the industry. So that newsletter goes out. We send it out Thursday night, and then Friday morning we get on and we go through the topics in the newsletter. So it's a news centric set of topics, but the news ends up doing, like, we'll start with the news, but the news is just the beachhead, if you will, to then get into deeper topics, whether it's technology or economy or things like that. So we end up with a much deeper conversation around some of these different areas here. We're not just regurgitating what's going on in the news. The news is just a catalyst, I guess is a better word for that, that's there. And what we've found from people is they find it's a great way for them to be caught up on what's going on in the industry and get some insights and get some perspective and so forth. So they listen regularly because obviously the news changes pretty frequently every week, or there's new news along the way that's there. But like I said, a lot of them, and we talk about our product, just so you know, that we talk about our company. Our company is the sponsor of the show. We talk about the product. We talk about it. We'll weave it in we'll weave it in our technology and our business during certain conversations that are there. But again, that by itself doesn't create the demand. It may create some interest or awareness. It doesn't create the demand. We still have to create the demand, but that demand's being done one-on-one in that partnership arrangement
Mhm.
because the trust is already there.
Yeah, I think I call that an episode strategy. on shows, and your strategy is to do that same episode style for
Yep.
every episode. I
Yep.
think it's brilliant. I think it's a great way of doing it, because what you're doing is leveraging other people's content to facilitate a conversation. And now you get to talk about what you know, what you think, what you've experienced. You get to share stories, but it's all around other people's content. And the way you do it with I think 4 different topics, you're giving a holistic, and you become a very important hour a week for people in that B2B wholesale distributor manufacturing space, because you become a 1 hour synthesized source of very valuable information. And just like we've done years ago, I mean, if you got a room full of 500 people and you got one person up at the podium speaking, who in most people's mind is the most important person in the room?
Sure.
The one speaking. So you guys have created through your show, and this is why I think shows are so important. You've created through your show that you're an important voice in the industry just by talking about what other people are writing about and adding your own insights to it.
And it's not that the show, my point being, the show doesn't replace other marketing and sales actions.
No, no.
But if you put that as a foundation, then the other marketing and sales actions are
Yeah.
not only smoother, but they're just they're just not as, like I said, they're more enjoyable, I guess, for lack of a better word, right? We all hate it when we get ghosted, or you know, we kind of get treated as a vendor who's pitching, and like no one likes that scenario, that relationship. But like I said, it changes the dynamic of the sales and marketing efforts. It doesn't change the fact that we still have to go through and do other marketing and sales efforts. And to you've said this all the way along. The podcast or the live show doesn't result in POs raining in just because you're doing the live show. It just
But
creates a foundation to put less friction into the or
right,
into the
what
conversation.
it does, because you become known, you become top of mind. They give you this expert status or influential voice status. They rely on you, they trust you, all of that. When the emails go out or the calls go out, they're like, oh, I know who you are. I mean, we've talked about this. Kevin, who does a lot more of the traveling in your partnership, goes to shows and people come up and go, Kevin, how you doing? I watch your show. And he has no idea who they are.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of people who know who he is because of the show.
Mm-hmm.
And we've heard it with customers. People walk right in there. Like, people walk down aisles at shows like this, like tunnel vision, because if I look over there, somebody's going to want me to come in. And they say people just walk right in our booth and go, hey, how you doing? And act like they know you, because the show builds that relationship even when you don't know you have that relationship.
Yeah.
So, Michael,
But
I
you
hope
do have to do it consistently, and you
Mhm.
do have to do it, and you have to be patient, and you have to do it over a period of time. I would say it took 50 episodes to start to get any traction whatsoever. And I think we've seen that with this show as well,
Yeah,
right? Get any sort of results from it, it's about 40 to 50
yeah.
episodes, which is a year, and I know that's hard for when we all have short-term goals, but if you're looking at a 5-year plan, make sure that's included, because it'll certainly make your future years that much easier.
Yeah. It builds up a back wave of people that when they're ready, you become either the option or one of only a few
Right.
options, because it's also easier for them at that point. I
Right.
don't have to go
Right.
I don't have to go research 10 companies. I'm going to narrow it down here. And as you said, you get a lot of people that you're the option they bring in and say, we want to pay you to come in and do
Yep.
a couple hours or a half day with us and talk about all this stuff that's going on.
Yeah. Okay.
I
Boy,
want to go back to the know, like, and
you want to
trust.
go ahead and like and trust? Yeah. Sorry.
Because I think it's interesting. I've seen a lot more content and opinions that know, like, and trust is dead, and that value is more important. And I would argue that the trust part incorporates value. I think, as you said with your show, they're giving you that know, like, and trust because they see you, they listen to you. They're not trusting you like, oh, Tom, come babysit my children. I trust you that way.
Right. Right.
It's more of hey, I trust the value that they're sharing with us. Like I've got to a point where I believe that what they're saying is accurate. I like their opinions. They're helping me think about my own problems or my own situations. And this show is contributing to the way I'm starting to think about some of the things that we need to address in our own company. And therefore, that know, like, and trust gets applied to you. So I believe it's splitting hairs. I commented on a post today of somebody that said know, like, and trust is dead. I've been seeing more of it. I don't think it's dead. I think if you define it a little bit more deeper, trust for me is a much bigger thing than just, oh, I trust you. Let's go grab a coffee. No.
Yeah, no, you totally nailed it, right? In the business world, right, trust has to have some value attached to it.
Right.
Because
Right.
otherwise, what's the basis of the trust?
Right.
Right?
There is no basis of
There
the
is no
trust.
basis for the
Yeah,
trust.
that's what I said. It's like, hey, Tom, come babysit my kids.
Right.
No, it's like, hey, Tom, come help me solve a problem. I trust what I've been learning from you, what I've been hearing. I trust the way that you're speaking about these articles that other people wrote and the insights you add to it. You're my guy. Let's talk.
But the whole know, like, and trust continuum has got value baked into that,
Mhm.
right? It's all
Yeah.
the way through in a business relationship.
And that's why I think, I'm a big believer in the humanity content, and I do believe that integrating it with your business. So use something you've done in your personal life in a picture to explain something inside a business is gold, because we're doing two things. We're speaking to the heart and we're speaking to the logic at the same time, right? We're giving rationale and we're also giving them insights to who we are as a human being. And that know, like, and trust is always, if I don't know you, I don't know you. If I
Right.
don't like you, well, then I'm not going to reach out to you. Even if you're the smartest person in the room and I don't like you, I can go find the second most, smartest person and who I like, and I'd rather spend time with them. So I think we have this big opportunity with our content to do that, to create that culture, if you will, to create that reputation, to be able to let people know a little bit about who we are, just like we do in a networking event, just like we do it live. If we're at dinner, let's say we've got a couple of customers, we have a couple of prospects, and maybe we have one colleague, and we're ordering tacos and margaritas. What percent of that conversation is business, and what percent of is it more humanity, and why? Like, what do you think, Tom?
Well, I think in a live event like or live setting like you're talking about, at least in the beginning, it's going to be more humanity oriented than it is business oriented.
Mhm.
But it usually provides a bridge into business conversation. Whether it's in 1 minute or 10 minutes or 20 minutes or whatever, right?
Mhm.
It usually creates a bridge into that, because if they haven't done it already, they're going to say, well, tell me more about what you do, or tell
Right.
me about your business, or whatever the case may be.
Yeah, and I would say, and Michael, I want to address your last comment here, but I would say that in that dinner environment, though, if somebody's just sitting there quiet, stoic, not very engaging, we may not care as much about, well, what do you do for business, because we're just not feeling like that connection. Or we will, but we move on. But if we're talking about, hey, we went, we took the family down to Disney or something. Oh, we did a Disney trip, and you bond over, like, yeah, it was a pain in the butt. It's, oh my gosh, you're crazy. Or, oh, we had this ride. Tell me what your experience. And you start bonding over those things. Then when you're getting into the business, there's already a better foundation of connection. Like, hey, I like talking to this person. I've enjoyed their stories. They're like me, or I like them and what they stand for. It just makes it easier to move to the value. If it's all value, then they're looking at three or four other companies, and it's just going to come down to the value. I still believe that human nature, we are going to choose to work with the people who we enjoy working with, all other things being considered. And I would say, even if the other company is a little bit better, but we don't enjoy them, we're going to choose the company we want to work with. And we've heard this for years.
I mean,
People make decisions with emotions and then support it with logic. And if they like you more than the next person, even if it's a little bit off, even if that might be a little bit of a better decision, it's okay. I mean, we talked about that when Matt Dixon, I think it was when Matt Dixon was on our show. We were talking about that. Humans don't make the logical decision.
no.
they had data on it, right? It was something like 60% plus of the time they didn't make the best decision according to logic.
The logic, yeah. No, there
Yeah.
was another element right into the
Right.
equation. But I think going back just to kind of wrap up this value conversation, we have know, like, trust, and then we have awareness, interest, and demand. Obviously, we want to have demand and trust, but value is weaved through all of that. Because
Hmm.
as soon as you're no longer adding value, you're certainly not going to create demand, and you're certainly not going to add to your trust.
Right.
So the value, I just, yeah, I don't think you could say, oh, no, like, trust is dead or demand creation is dead. No, those are not dead at all. But
No,
value is weaved through the entire thing.
it's a different muscle. And that, I think that's the hardest part for people is content is we have to use a different muscle. And what I mean by that is this, where we used to, like, we could get into a boardroom and then we get in there and it was all logic, like, oh, here's what we do, here's this, here's that. Our content on awareness, interest, and demand scale, we're still developing awareness by telling our stories.
Sure.
We're creating interest by sharing, hey, here's a problem that we're dealing with, and here's how we're coming up against it. And these are the challenges that are coming, but here's where it's working good. We're developing interest there because if they're, addressing similar problems, they're starting to like, hey, these guys get us. What they're talking about here is similar to what we're doing. That's creating interest, and ultimately, it will create demand as you keep talking about that. You keep sharing what you're learning, what you're going through, what you're solving, and how it's playing out.
Yep.
But it's a
Absolutely.
different muscle. It's speaking differently than most of us are used to.
I think that's a good way to look at it, right? It's a different muscle motion than the historical
Yeah.
sales, pitching, or marketing actions that we do.
And it's hard for a lot of us, especially like Gen X to baby boomers. I mean, we generally work with people that are around, 40 to 65. And in the early part of our career, we didn't have to talk this way.
Yeah. Yeah.
We didn't have to share content this way. We printed brochures, we mailed them out. Somebody looked at it, went, interesting, bring them in. But they also brought in 10 other people.
Right.
Right? It's a different muscle. It's just a different tone of what we're doing. I'd like to look at like Michael's question about why he asked you about your show, because they're in digital label printer business. Michael, I think your industry is ripe for the same style of show that Tom does on his other show, where you're curating content from the industry and then talking about it and feeding it right back to your buyers because they're curious about all this stuff as well. And look, we're all lazy to an extent, right? If I can take 2 steps to get something done, why would I take 10? So when you have a show and you're bringing the industry content to them and you're dissecting it and you're talking about it and you're curating it and you're talking about what it means and what are some of the potential implications of it, that's how Tom and Kevin have established themselves in the wholesale distribution and manufacturing space. Your industry, it's manufacturing. I mean, your buyers are manufacturers and they're dealing with all these other things. You can talk about, I mean, your show could actually be very, very similar to Tom's. You're talking about shipping, you're talking about materials, you're talking about tariffs. People are going to pay attention. And then, oh, yeah, you do label printers.
Yep. Yeah. And if you're Michael, just send an email to hello@leadsmarttech.com and we'll put you on the newsletter list and you can see it in action, see how it's actually being done. And get more idea. But I agree with you completely, Brandon. I think most everybody, I mean, we're all serving in it, or most of us are serving some industry or some vertical, right?
Mhm.
And I think that when you can curate content that's relevant or at least slanted towards that vertical, it gives you a real opportunity to establish yourself in that vertical as, kind of rising above the noise. So
And I know we're pushing our time, but let's spend like 2 minutes talking about relationships or the differentiator. I know that was on our agenda, and I believe everything we've talked about has been leading to that. But Tom, what would you say about relationships or the differentiator and why that's so important in modern selling?
I think it comes back to what we were just talking about, right? Vendor versus partner, and
Hmm.
and how you're, I want to say how you're treated, but how you're engaging in the sales process, right? In a modern sales process, ideally, again, I'm not thrilled with the word vendor, or I'm sorry, partner, but at least we're kind of talking to each other as respected peers. And maybe that's a better way to, or
Hmm.
respected, and and when you have respect for somebody, you treat them differently, you treat them with more respect, you give them more of your attention, you feel bad if you blow them off for no reason, right? It's like all of those things that we want we want to have in the relationships that we're doing. I think modern selling is, the key to modern selling is that having those respectful, sort of peer like relationships,
Hmm.
hence the word relationship in there, right? So I think going back to relationships, it's one thing to say, well, what is the relationship? And having a vendor, customer relationship, you're going to get the outcome of that relationship, which may be different than a relationship where you have that more respect in the
Yeah.
processes there.
Yeah. And my other show is called Revenue Through Reputation. And I think everything I heard you say, Tom, is about establishing that reputation inside of an industry. They're looking at you and say, oh, they're connected. They know these people. They're talking about these different topics. People are coming on as different guests, talking about the same conversation with you. People are commenting on it. That reputation also helps establish that trust and that partner status because we want to work with people who we believe are going to help and lead
Sure,
us.
sure.
And that comes through reputation. So as you guys are doing your show and you're talking about all these different articles and what's going on in the industry, you're also bringing on different guests. And
Mhm.
those guests add to your reputation because you're like, oh, they got this person. Oh, they got, this big dog or that big dog on it. And it establishes a reputation. It's like if you're at an event and you look over and you see three of like the big influential dogs from your industry, and then there's four or five other people talking with them, you start to like, well, who are those people? Right? Who are they? And they're over there talking with them.
Yeah.
They'll automatically get some credibility and their reputation will grow because they're talking with the influential voices from the space.
Mhm.
And those are all things that we can create through shows.
Nope, totally agree.
So, Michael, thank you for great questions today.
Yep. Well, man, that was another quick hour. We
That
got
went by
through
fast.
we got through half of our agenda here today.
I
So,
know. I know.
well, I guess we'll have to do a part two of what's working in 2025.
That sounds good.
And if Carson would have been here, we might have only gotten through one topic between all
That's
of us.
true. That's
So
true. We miss him today.
yeah.
Well, shall we wrap up? Thank you,
Yeah, let's
everybody.
wrap up.
Yeah, thanks everybody for joining us. Hey, look, Tom Carson and I started this almost 3 years ago, and I'm curious. Michael just added another comment. You read it and respond to it while I say this. Look, Tom Carson and I started this. We didn't know what we were doing about 3 years ago. We knew. I mean, it came down to we were having conversations with the three of us. We're like, oh, we should have recorded that. Oh, we should share that with other people. There was some really good stuff that came out of it, and that's how the show came about. Um, you know, Tom and I are just business owners trying to figure a lot of this stuff ourselves. We each have different backgrounds in marketing and sales and being, CEOs of companies and trying to make money and feed our families and figure stuff out along the way. So we appreciate when you join us and share your insights. We've learned some things on the way along the way and we're happy to share it, but we know we don't know everything. And so we appreciate all the comments and people that join us and give us more topics that we should be talking about.
Yeah, and thank you, Michael. He said he's been following the channel, and now as a result, he's been able to understand and how to use LinkedIn as a window to present their products, and it looks like it's been a positive outcome because he says the company is growing, and he's proud to share his experience in his dealer network. So thank
That's
you, Michael. Yeah, it's
our
great.
I see you sharing your experiences in your dealer network. Michael, I have some ideas on how to work with dealer networks too. If you want to talk about that, there's some great opportunities with dealer networks and empowering them with your
Yeah.
content.
Yeah.
Content is really hard for people, even with AI. Content is still really hard. There's a lot more content being produced, but there's a lot more bad content being produced. But the one thing I really like, not one thing, lots of things I like about shows is that the content is authentic and it's genuine because it's coming from people's mouths. And then what we do with that content is the amazing part. That's where the magic happens. How do we use it for sales content? How we use it for marketing content? How do we use it for social content? And that's really why our playbook is, hey, give us about an hour a week. As you see for us, we've gone over an hour today, but give us about an hour a week and spend time on a show. And then the things that we can do with that video content and that written content is pretty widespread.
All right. Well, thank you again. And Brandon, you want to just take us home?
Sure. Yeah. Hey, thank you everybody for joining us. Happy modern selling. And please, any feedback, topics, questions, bring it on. Like I said before, we're still trying to learn all this stuff alongside with you. And we're happy to entertain whatever topics, ideas, or challenges you're facing and bring it on the show. So thanks so much, everybody. Have a great rest of your week. Happy
Yep.
Easter to those that celebrate. It's an important week for those that celebrate. So have a great weekend with you.